name is Dan Maloney. And I guess I've worked for the VA since 1974, which seems like a long time. Started as a biomedical engineer up in Albany, where I ran into a really interesting guy because I was interested in computers, who's named Joe Tatarczyk, who later became one of the Verification and Development Center directors, if anybody remembers that term a while ago. I was there for about 5 years and came down to Washington, D.C., where I was from. And they had a bigger and better biomed program. And also at that point in time, they were one of the DHCP, one of the few DHCP initial sites. And I guess ran into people like Marty Johnson, Frank Gallipo, Javier Albaran, Chuck Leahy. And I'd always been interested in computers and had been doing some various kinds of work like cardiology, patient education things, and audiology rating systems, and then ran into this neat stuff called MUMPS and File Manager. And I was a biomedical engineer, so we had all kinds of needs to manage our program. And of course, there wasn't any automation whatsoever, so I started basically doing things to keep track of when the docs would call down and report equipment that wasn't working, which then gave a link over to order systems, which was kind of the precursor for IFCAP. And that basically over the years expanded and became a national program that was distributed as the engineering program, which was actually the first turnkey MUMPS system that was ever shipped out, I believe. We packaged up at DEC. What was the guy's name? Jerry? Melnick, yes. Very good. Thanks, Milt. Jerry Melnick, well, whatever. It was a turnkey system. We put the whole thing together with the application and the operating system. So when it got to the medical center, they unplugged it, connected to the network, and did a couple of things, and it went off and running. Then one day there's a guy named Dr. Ross Fletcher, and he was up in cardiology, and we had worked on a number of different things, including some automated ECG analysis systems. And they needed something called the pacemaker follow-up, some mechanism to keep track of VA veterans who had pacemakers. That was currently, they were being tracked well, but it was all facility-based, and there was no way to pull the data together. So they wanted to have something very quick put together, and they wanted to establish a national system. So Ross and I talked for a while, and he sent down one of the cardiologists in the cardiology department. I still remember they had a little list of some of the standard diagnoses, which was in Italian, and the guy was translating as we went, as we were building reference files and things. But I think we had 2 weeks or something like that to do it, and we put together the first version of the pacemaker surveillance system, which ended up being the East Coast pacemaker surveillance system, which is still running, has been significantly enhanced, and is doing very good work. And I guess the FDA calls upon the VA quite regularly to do research on leads and pacemakers and things like that. So the issue, your question, Tom, was, when did I first run into MUMPS? I first ran into MUMPS there at the Washington Medical Center. And Marty Johnson was there giving general instructions on the language and on how to use it, and on this marvelous thing called the VA File Manager, and how to use that and how to create it. So basically that was the foundation for the programs that I wrote. There's also a great guy named Milt Roberson who was upstairs at the Washington Medical Center, who was one of the prime people running a hospital information system called AHIS at that point in time, which was fairly advanced. And over the years, one of the hard parts was when DHCP was released in the version 1, I guess you would call it, which was MAS and outpatient pharmacy back in, was it 82? Yeah. One of the hard parts is the AHIS program was actually out there and doing things like lab orders throughout the medical center. So how do you merge in a new system that doesn't have all the functionality of the other system? And well, eventually the lab system, DHCP lab, came out and it was well accepted and embraced by the medical staff. And Milt saw the light and came over from the dark side, came over and joined us in DHCP and has had a great career in helping DHCP over the years.
Any more?
Fine, sounds good.
Yeah, let's talk about forum.
That's okay. You want to do it?
No, go ahead.
Come on over, Milt. Sit down.
I think you need to talk about forum, Milt.
I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
That's what we all thought.
Dan, go ahead.
Come on, Milt. Come on, Milt. Well, there was an underground. There was one of the technical groups meetings got together, and the idea was to create an electronic forum for people to be able to electronically communicate, which sounds fairly boring these days, but back then it was revolutionary. And so actually Dr. Augie Toronto was assigned the task and came up with version 1, which we popped up. We got a little computer system, which was probably a word processor at the time, and bought some phone lines and some modems and put it together, and people started dialing in from all over the country, exchanging ideas. And it was a great hit. It basically evolved into Mailman. Augie's system was version 1, and we learned a lot with it, and it was great. And it evolved into Mailman, and Forum basically became, I guess, a national center for communicating. And Milt became the czar of Forum, among other things. He was our technical director, and one of the prime duties was keeping Forum going, and also he did the VA some great services, well, many great services, but one of them I remember very well was when conversations started getting too emotional and people started using foul language and things like that. Milt would intervene and straighten it out, and it really did a lot to keep that professional level of communication and talking about ideas going. So he wasn't really the teacher or the monitor or anything, but he was there. He didn't mind weighing in every now and then and keeping people straight. So
what was the forum statistics? How heavily was it used?
It's been a long time, Milt. Do you remember?
Just a second. Let's get Milt on here.
Well, I'd like to build a little bit on Milt's thing. That 300 baud modem connection that went out to the West Coast was really earth-shaking because it connected the VA network to stuff outside using SMTP. That's right. Yeah. And it was a big deal for the VA to communicate electronically outside, and it begat eventually something called a link with internet, which was the first in the VA, too.
Well, Dan, I'd like to present you with the Certificate of Outstanding Engineering Achievement to the Underground Railroad here. So, let's go here. You don't like the flash, huh? Okay, Dan, you want to talk about that and show it up to the camera. So, you don't need to see it. Let the camera see it.
Okay. I guess that's true. How old is this, Tom?
20.
20-some? Yeah.
83, maybe.
Yeah, I guess this was presented
what specifically
long time ago.
To earn this? It's pretty prestigious, Dan. I mean, this is.
Well, by that time, yeah, that's true. These are very rare, I think.
Okay.
Beth Teeple received one also at the time because she was out at the Air Force Base in California and had been pioneering DHCP and Vista, well, DHCP
Hold it steady.
DHCP and DoD at the time, and doing very good and making customers very happy.
Talk a little bit about the award and what it meant to get it and how it worked.
I think the award in particular was probably surrounding the work with Forum or with engineering or with the medicine package or the dental package, I'm not sure, or the combination.
I think it might have been engineering.
Could have been engineering. That was about
that first rollout was important.
Yeah, and engineering was not one of the initial clinical things, and it was an example of how I guess the philosophy, the DHCP philosophy and the systems could be used by other packages, even non-clinical things. Because at the time we were pretty much focused on clinical, so that was probably it. Kind of official buy-in by other groups in the organization.
Looking for a soundbite, Dan. Give me a 10-second description of what it meant to get one of those things. Was it emotional to you? Did it recognize you?
I cried for no, it was great. I mean, and this kind of does a segue into the whole DHCP environment and the whole the mechanism of getting people excited about the program. There were periodically, a couple times a year, there were banquets, and people would get together, and significant people would come, including the head people in central office, a couple people on the Hill, and awards would be given out. There weren't that many of them, but as you can see, they weren't all that expensive and exotic either, but you know, they meant a lot to everybody. It's kind of recognition to people for making contributions. And that's one of the great things about DHCP is it was very inclusive. It encouraged users and encouraged people to get involved with DHCP and helping develop the programs, which is really a key part of the success. And like I said, I was a biomedical engineer who basically started out that way and started working with the user-oriented tools to create services, to create things that I needed to manage my organization. And that's the way a lot of other people did too with pharmacy and other areas, is they started as users and eventually converted over and became more and more involved with the automation. So having the banquets, having people get together, having a number of awards and a lot of communications really did help a lot.